Hey everyone! It's Daily Mr. Reddit here and welcome to our latest video. Today, we'll be delving into a sensitive topic. Teachers play a vital role in shaping the minds and lives of our students. While we hope to see them grow and succeed, sometimes they reveal a side of themselves that breaks our hearts. I hope you enjoy this video. Teachers of Reddit, what is the most depressing thing your kids have said? Story 1. I've had a lot, but one morning two students came in early to my room and asked if they could use my student computer. I said sure, and figured that they just needed to finish a project and knew I always got to school early. Sadly, this was not the case. Turns out their best friend was murdered 2 days ago because he wouldn't give his money he earned to someone trying to rob him. His family needed the money to not be homeless, so he died trying to look out for his family, and for like $80 or something. My students were creating flyers and a GoFundMe so they could try to help the parents not be homeless, and to afford a funeral. To make matters worse, the kid was murdered on a Saturday. He was left to bleed out and die, to be found the next morning. The F***king murderer came to my school on Monday as if nothing had happened. Cops pulled him out of the class in the middle of the day once they had figured out it was him. Story 2. One of my students who was always in a good mood came into the class looking very down. She was not acting her usual self. I had to get onto her several times for being on her phone, again, very unlike her. She asked if she could speak to me in the hallway. "Kid, I'm sorry for being in such a bad mood today. Can I tell you why?" "Me, of course." Kid proceeds to take her cardigan off. She had a tank top on underneath, and showed me welts that she had gotten the night before from her mother beating her with an electric cord. She says, "My mother beat me for no reason last night and I don't know what to do." Sadly, it was not the first time I had to report. But long story short, there was a happy ending. She got to move with her father, much better situation, who lived about an hour and a half away. She was able to finish the school year with us. Her dad would drive her that long distance every morning, and the next school year, she started at her new school. The abuse had been going on for a while. She was an only child. I taught high school freshmen, so she was 14. The day after she told me, she came to my classroom during my conference period and hugged me for a very long time. Story 3. My mother was a teacher for nearly 30 years. She spent the last 10 years at a middle school that was pretty hard up in the Tulsa public school system. She had a very good student who came to school every day in the same clothing. We can call him Jay. The clothing was always washed, but even so, around halfway through the year, his clothing was becoming tattered and stained. The other students began to notice and make comments. The school tried to give him clothing, but he refused. He would not accept a handout. A few teachers came up with a plan for the school to put on a contest where the winner was given some new, very nice, school clothing. This contest was set up for Jay to win. This way he could have new clothing and not feel as though he was given anything. Jay won the contest. He accepted the new clothing gladly. The next day he was still wearing his old clothes. My mom asked him why he was not wearing the new clothing. He said, "Those are my trophies. I have them hanging on my wall." Story 4. Not a teacher but one of my close friends. I've known her since the start of high school. She never realized her home life was as bad as it was. She spoke about her mom neglecting her while the 14 foster cats they could barely afford to feed were spoiled rotten, and how eating the same thing every night, her only meal for the day, started to make her nauseous. The real kicker is that her mother got cancer, and as soon as she died, she said, "I'm so glad she's dead. I wish she'd died sooner." Or something along those lines. She was 16 when her mother died, and she's 18 now. She's never going to leave those horrible scars, and the things she tells me about are horrifying. She lives with her dad now and has a proper home, regular good meals, etc. I have no idea how her dad didn't get custody when she was a child. He's an amazing dad to her and would probably do anything to help her more. Story 5. I teach pretty much exclusively college freshmen, and by that point they all have that fatalistic sense of humor anyway, but it gets real sad when they get to the end of their rope. Nothing specific that I can remember, but a lot of "why did I think I could make it in college, I'm too stupid for this, I should drop out," and they actually mean it. Stuff like that. Monday, however, a student asked to talk to me before class and said, "I know this paper is important and all, and I don't want you to hate me, but I couldn't get my paper done, and I'm used to this sort of thing. I mean, it's just natural." But then he take a deep breath and blurts out, "My dad called me last night and told me he was leaving my mom and moving away, so he's leaving me too, and I just couldn't deal with it. I'm really sorry if you're mad at me." It just hits me hard when they have to deal with more than they should, and on top of that they think I've formed a personal opinion of them and that I'm going to think badly of them based on something like this. Story 6. I ran holiday science workshops, filled with brainy kids as you'd expect. There was an 11-year-old girl who was brilliant at everything. The content was clearly beneath her. Very quiet, respectful, well-liked by the other kids. Her parents were moving soon because she received scholarships to a prestigious school. Whenever her dad came to pick her up, he was obviously proud, telling me about all her achievements, how she was in advanced classes, just won all these sports awards too, etc. Showed videos and photos of her winning all these soccer games. They enrolled her younger brother in similar sessions. He gave it a go in the first few but really struggled, always the last to finish, and felt his work didn't look as good as the others. Looked embarrassed to ask for help. He screamed at his sister when she tried to fix his circuit. Eventually he just began acting out, putting off the work, challenging me to get a laugh out of the other kids, messing around. After a disastrous month, he stopped trying altogether. He just came in one afternoon and sat there, not doing anything. I tried to engage him in the activity and said if he didn't like what the other kids were doing, we could pick anything else he wanted to do. He said something like, "What's the point? My parents will never love me as much as they love my sister." Story 7. My student told us that her mom was taken by ambulance to the hospital the night before after she stopped breathing. The other kids pressed her on what happened and she just shrugged and said her mom would be okay. 2 days later, I got the word that her mom was brain dead. Her daughter had no idea. That Friday afternoon, I let the kids have an extra recess and watched my student play and laugh with all the other kids in the sun, knowing that she might not be happy like that again for a long time. Story 8. I was an assistant for a second-grade teacher, and during the second-grade lunch break the preschoolers were going to recess. One would always stop in our classroom and I became his best friend. One day I asked him if he was excited for spring break and he said no. I asked him why not. He said he didn't have his own room and his mom lets random people stay at their house all the time. He said someone is supposed to wait for him to get off the bus but is usually never there, so he walks home by himself, and he can only eat at school, so he hates weekends and school breaks. It explained his odd behaviors. Whenever he would win a prize or get a good grade on a test, the students would get candy, but he would always ask for fruit or actual food, so the teacher I was an assistant for would always keep a bag of oranges, granola bars, and other snacks for him to get when he stopped by to see us during recess. We of course reported what he said. I have no idea what happened after that. Story 9. I teach in a local school in Hong Kong. 2 very close friends, both are grade 7, but one comes from a very wealthy family. We will call him Richard, the other not, we will call him Greg. Richard always comes to school in a Mercedes driven by a chauffeur, while Greg comes to school by MTR, the public train system, and then walks to school by himself. After school or during weekends, they always go to Richard's house driven by his chauffeur because obviously he has more space and toys and whatnot. One day, I noticed Richard looking quite sad, so I approached him. He told me he asked his mom if he could take the MTR to school alone and then go to Greg's house by MTR. She immediately said no and told him off for even suggesting taking the MTR when they have a chauffeur. I asked Richard why he asked that. He said because he wanted to see how Greg's life was like compared to his own, to see how tough Greg has it. I said you could tell your mom the reason because she also knows Greg's situation. In the end, Richard told me he talked to his mom, but she flipped, saying stuff like, "Do you want to be seen as a poor person on the MTR?" Story 10. Once I was playing a game with my kiddos to get to know them better. Would you rather? I asked, would you rather have the power to be invisible or time travel? The group started separating until one boy shouted, "I want to go back in time so I could see my dad again." And one by one, every child in the class yelled, me too," until they were all on one side of the room. It was a second and third grade class. I got such a lump in my throat. Story 11. I'm a first-year elementary school English teacher in Japan. I try not to ask the kids questions that are too personal, since it's not my place to overstep those boundaries, but my students often come to school even if they're sick. I once asked one of them why they didn't ask to stay home if they were feeling so bad, and they told me I don't have a choice. There's a huge societal pressure to attend school or work no matter how bad you're feeling, and if you don't go to the hospital, you aren't sick enough and become a topic of concern. That's the mentality for everyone, including the teachers and salarymen that overwork themselves to the point of physical exhaustion and illness, and it breaks my heart. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe.